So the Cleveland Browns are they're in a weird spot in the NFL because everyone's hyping them up so much, but I actually had a conversation with someone about the Jets in this regard. The Jets will always be the Jets. No matter the general manager, no matter the coach, no matter anything like that, they are who they are, and they're a shit franchise. The Cleveland Browns are in the same breath. They are the Cleveland Browns. No matter what coach you put in there, no matter what players you bring into the organization, they're still the fucking Cleveland Browns, and they're not going to amount to anything.
I watched some highlights of the games that they lost last year to try to get a sense of what was going on, because I saw some highlight tapes and they were doing like so many good things. They have so much talent on offense, and you look at them and like they're like Baker Mayfield's completing passes and Nick Chubb is running for 25 yards and Odell Beckham's making this crazy catch and Jarvis Landry, blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, how does this team suck? And then you watch some of the highlights of their losses, and it's like, oh, it's the Browns. They're just finding Brownie ways to lose games. Penalties, like ridiculous turnovers in like the worst situations possible. So many games last year that they lost, and they were 6-10. So just a couple games going their way, they're in the playoffs. So many games, they're in complete control of the game, and then they just find like miraculous ways to lose it. So Freddie Kitchens going helps. In theory, you bring in Kevin Stefanski, who has never been a head coach. The only time that he was an offensive coordinator was he's been with the Vikings his entire career as a position coach, offensive coordinator last year, and the first
as offensive coordinator.
And the first thing he does as offensive coordinator, his big shot, he brings in Gary Kubiak, one of like the most like heavy-handed, like has his fingerprints all over a style of offense. And says like, let's just share it. And let's use your terminology, by the way. I don't want any ownership of this whatsoever. And it's not like the Vikings offense was that good. They were 23rd in total yards last year. It's not like Kirk Cousins was that good. They had a good running game, but like that offense wasn't like a world beating offense. So is Kevin Stefanski that big of a step up from Freddie Kitchens? I don't think so. What it comes down to is to me, Baker Mayfield. Because Nick Chubb is a dynamic player that just jumps off the tape. But when you watch when you watch Baker Mayfield, he can make the throws, but there's a shocking amount of times when he's completing passes, and Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry are just making like these ridiculous circus catches. Baker Mayfield is so inaccurate. 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions last year, less than a 60% completion percentage. And he also does it at the worst possible time. He's a first quarter hero. So many times they went up 10, 14, nothing. And then they just like the offense just completely stalled. And it's because Mayfield can't throw an accurate football. So that was alarming in his second year. Maybe that was a sophomore slump. And he comes back this year. Maybe if Kevin Stefanski borrows some of Gary Kubiak's offense and they run it all through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, that takes some of the burden off of Baker Mayfield. But there's just so many question marks to have any kind of optimism about the Browns, especially given their history, as you alluded to, Mike.
Yeah, and I think that like what you're sort of saying, or like what Mike was saying anyway, and everything Matt was sort of a byproduct of this is like it's culture, and culture is really hard to change. And like we saw that firsthand. Like one of my favorite clips of Hard Knocks of all time was Jarvis Landry yelling at the wide receiver room, being like, I don't care how hurt you are, you fucking practice. Like we're gonna get out there. Like just like have the cart drive you out, and I'll throw you the ball and catch the ball. Like, and it's about like having that winning attitude. And I think it does. You need a catalyst to change a culture, because like there will always be more people that were there last year than like new faces this year. So you can change the head coach who has a say, but like people might approach it with resentment. You can change the quarterback, you can change the GM, like whatever it is. But like these things take like years to evolve and like sort of sink in. But the one thing that you can do to change everything is put the MVP behind center. You know, like if you've got a quarterback that everyone subscribes to and you're like, this guy is making throws off the chart. If I am not playing at his level, then I am not doing my team like a service. And I think that's what happened with the Patriots, who are one of these teams that you could say 20 years ago, they're the Patriots. It doesn't even matter because like they're just a shitty franchise.
Right.
And then all of a sudden Tom Brady walks in and everyone's like, oh my God, like he hits every throw. And like he goes 110% every practice. And like Baker, I've seen him do lots of good things. And if he starts to like really exceed on the field or excel on the field, then like, I think there's a chance because like the talent is around him, but like that on the field, I think it can only happen from a quarterback. Like you might be able to get a defensive leader to elevate your defense, but that's still not going to be enough to change the culture in your building. Like once
wait, Teddy, you don't think that? So I actually thought, judging by like Hard Knocks and I mean just the entire, I mean decades upon decades of a sample size that you can just resort to like going through. I feel like the trend is actually, I don't want to say that the tide is kind of turning in a way. Like I disagreed with the moves of like just accruing receivers like Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. If you don't necessarily have the answer at quarterback, but I feel like the football decisions that they were making, the talent level that they have on the team has obviously gone up, trying to do something different. And I actually thought the GM was like kind of a decent influence as opposed to, I mean, Hugh Jackson, like getting rid of him after years and years. And also like the Bengals are another example of just like mediocrity and settling for it. And I think that getting Jackson out of that franchise, trying to clean house with the coaching staff and obviously Kitchens didn't work out. And that was, a bad football decision, but they let that, run its course fairly quickly. So I feel like they're trying to make better decisions now. And obviously, like you said, the culture doesn't change overnight or within one season. Obviously it's a lot easier if you have a superstar quarterback, which I don't think they have. I think the only problem that the Browns are having right now is because of all the talent they've brought in, they're overhyped. But I do feel like that franchise is actually moving in a direction that's, I mean, more or less positive or in the right direction as opposed to where they're coming from, which was absolute dog shit. I mean, People used to have jerseys where they would just change the name on the back of it for the quarterback that was going to change inevitably every fucking year. So, I mean, now they might have a little bit more stability. We regardless of what you want to say about Baker Mayfield, he's better than the shit that they've had behind center for
100%
2 decades. So I think that the Browns, while they are overhyped, I don't think they might not even be close to a playoff team. But I mean, 6 wins, 7 wins, God forbid 8 wins is leaps and bounds better than what you were looking at. So I can't say that I think that franchise is just dog shit, will always be dog shit, whatever. I actually think that the decisions they had been making were, as opposed to like a long-suffering Jets fan, I was kind of envious of what they had been trying to do as far as like make, dynamic changes and just rebuild completely, as opposed to just, I don't know, it seemed like lateral moves and, terrible coaching decision after terrible. And the Jets just being, I don't know, a little bit more like hands off in their approach. So I am more positive or more high on that.
To be clear, I'm a Browns apologist. I like them. I like the moves they've made, and they went from 1-31 over 2 years to go 8-7-1, and then I guess 6-10, which is a little bit of a disappointment. But like, all I'm trying to say is that like they went from a complete horseshit. This is an organization that like never goes anywhere to like making actual strides, but like it takes time. It takes
definitely.
And special people in addition.
I think they're suffering from their own hype right now. That's what my point is, that they're suffering from the fact that they brought in huge names, but that kind of detracts from the other talent they have within the franchise and the other decisions that they're trying to make to give that team more stability, more talent that like will last, as opposed to just having high profile wide receivers.
Yeah. Teddy, I am banging on your fucking drum right now because you hit it on the head a couple minutes ago with fucking culture, because that's what the Browns organization needs. And to your point, they hit the nail on the head with fucking Jarvis Landry.
Oh,
what he was doing during Hard Knocks, my blood was pumping. I was just like, yo, I want to go fight for this fucking guy, right? But he had Hugh Jackson there as the boss.
Right.
And
those clips too, right? You saw
Yeah.
it. He's just like,
yeah, bless him, or whatever it was that he was saying. Like, that reminded me kind of like Ocho Cinco with like Kiss the Baby and like shit like that. People fucking respected Ocho Cinco, Chad Johnson, for whatever it was. People were getting on board with Jarvis Landry when you have this fucking pussyfoot of a head coach and Hugh Jackson, God rest his soul, because he's never going to get a head coaching job ever again. And where this culture starts from, it's not the head coach. It's not the players. It's the fucking ownership, because they keep making terrible fucking decisions. And I'm tired of this with the fucking – I'm not even a Browns fan. I could give a shit. But they keep making these terrible fucking decisions. They decide to hire Freddie Kitchens when they should have hired Greg Williams as their head coach, because he took over as the interim head coaching job, and he did a phenomenal job with that team. That defense, Greg Williams, say what you will about the guy, his defenses are always – phenomenal, and he doesn't need big name players to produce on the field. Instead, you hire a guy like Freddie Kitchens. Now, going into 2020, you drop the ball by hiring no head coaches, none of the top head coaches that were out there. You take a 1-year offensive coordinator, make him your head coach of your entire organization, where you have all these big name fucking personalities, and you just continually make bad decisions. Not saying Kevin Stefanski can't be the guy, but I don't believe he is. And one thing that ruined the Browns organization also is you have your leader on that offense in Jarvis Landry, as we just talked about. And what do? You bring in a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. Now all the young guys on the team, do you think they're listening to Jarvis? No, they're fucking listening to that idiot Odell Beckham Jr. and all his crybaby nonsense and everything like that. So you have just completely devalued everything that Jarvis Landry has built and put in place for those younger players on the team, and just thrown it completely out the window by getting a guy like that, because no one's going to listen to Jarvis now, no matter how much he talks.